A banana. It looks really dangerous on paper. Sugar, carbs, the whole thing. Bacon looks safe. Yeah, 0 carbs, 0 spike on your monitor. But if you're only watching the number on your CGM, you're watching the wrong thing. One of these is quietly working against you. And it isn't the fruit. I did this video just for you.
On a continuous glucose monitor, the banana does exactly what you'd expect. Blood sugar rises, then comes back down as insulin does its job. Bacon does the opposite on that same monitor. Almost no rise at all. No carbs, no glucose spike. That's the whole reason it gets treated as the safe choice, and why so much popular advice tells people to fear the fruit and trust the fat. This is where something researchers call the Randle Cycle comes back into the picture. A discovery from the 1960s that's since been confirmed with modern muscle imaging technology. Scientists found that when fat levels in the blood rise, like after a high-fat meal such as bacon, that fat starts building up inside your muscle cells. And when it does, it interferes with how those cells respond to insulin, well before any sugar or carbs even enter the picture. Here's the simple version. That fat buildup sends a signal inside the cell that blocks the normal process your body uses to let glucose in. And the key point is, this can happen without a single gram of carbohydrate being involved. This isn't something unique to bacon. It's about fat levels in the blood rising in general, no matter which food causes it. Research on this showed the effect appearing within about 3 to 4 hours after fat levels went up, with the interference measurable well before that window closed. That means the same thing can happen after any meal that raises blood fat significantly. A fried appetizer, a plate of cheese, a salad drowned in oily dressing. Bacon is just a clean example because it's almost pure fat with 0 carbs, which is exactly why a flat line on a glucose monitor can be so misleading. But this isn't about bacon specifically. It's about the fat itself, wherever it comes from. That's also why this channel's whole food, low-fat approach isn't just one diet philosophy among many. It's a direct response to this exact problem. Cutting back on concentrated fat, no matter the source, removes the fuel for this whole issue in the first place. The next time glucose does show up from any meal, anytime later, that muscle cell is less able to respond to insulin and pull the sugar in. The damage doesn't show up on today's flatline. It shows up as reduced insulin sensitivity down the road, sometimes hours later. Sometimes the next day. This is the part that trips up even careful CGM users. A flat line only tells you what happened to glucose in that window. It says nothing about whether the fat you just ate is quietly working against tomorrow's meal. The banana's glucose rise is real, but it's transient. It doesn't leave behind a fat-driven signaling block. Once insulin clears that glucose, the muscle cell's ability to respond to insulin next time isn't diminished by the banana itself. That's an important distinction because it means the two curves on the monitor, rise and fall versus flat, are measuring completely different things. One shows a temporary expected response. The other shows the absence of a response, which isn't the same as the absence of a consequence. A fair question at this point, doesn't the body need some fat? Yes, certain fats are essential, and whole plant foods like nuts, seeds, and avocado carry meaningful amounts of fat, alongside fiber, protein, and nutrients that change how that fat gets used by the body. The concern here isn't fat existing in a meal. It's concentrated, isolated fat, rendered animal fat, added oils, processed fat sources that can raise blood fat levels well past what a modest amount of fat inside a whole food does.
There's also something worth naming. The same few grams of fat behave differently eaten inside a whole almond than poured from a bottle of oil, partly because fiber and structure in the whole food slow things down. That's why the goal for most people isn't zero fat. It's minimizing concentrated, isolated fat sources, while whole plant foods that happen to contain fat stay on the table.
To be clear, this isn't a claim that bacon is worse than a banana in every context, or that fruit is risk-free in any amount. It's narrower than that. A flat CGM reading by itself is not proof that a food is metabolically neutral. The absence of a glucose spike is not the same measurement as insulin sensitivity. If you're managing this condition using a monitor as your only feedback tool, this is the blind spot worth knowing about.
This is a trap. I fell into it for years, chasing a flat CGM line and calling it a win. On a whole food plant-based low fat, I stopped optimizing for today's numbers and started optimizing for whether my cells could still hear insulin next week. Yes, that's what took me from 83 units of insulin a day down to 35 a day. The banana was never the enemy. The fat quietly working in the background was. If you want more information on diabetes, follow and click the link below. That's not managing it, that's dominating it.